Hi, I'm KL Kettle and welcome to episode 12 of the Book Chain Project. This week, Annaliese Avery is interviewing Anna Bowles, whose debut Rapids came out with Untitled this year. It's a story of friendship and mental health, and Anna is also a fantastic editor, so there's lots of great chats about what it means to be an editor and her experience traversing that editor-writer boundary. So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, people of Instagram. I don't know if this is working. If it is, perhaps you could let me know. Says Kitty's joined and she's waving. Yay! I'm assuming this works. I did just have to scream downstairs to a child, be like, how do you do Instagram? So they didn't come and save me. I managed to save myself, which I think is the best kind of way to do it, to be honest, but there we go. Hopefully we will be joined very shortly by the very wonderful Anna Bowles, who has written Rapids, but in the meantime I'm here for the Book Chain Project, which was put together by the very amazing Kitty Kettle. Last week I was interviewed by Louise Gooding, and this week I'm interviewing Anna. It's very exciting. Oh, and here she is.
Hello. Yes, I went to grab a copy of Rapids because I realised I need to wave it in due course. You've got one too, so we can both wave it.
It's very handy to have copies of your book available, just for waving purposes and maybe fanning purposes, because it's a bit warm today.
It is, yes. It's gone dingy again here, so it's back to normal.
Well, my study is in the attic, and in the morning it's lovely because the sun is on the other side of the house, but by this time in the evening it's absolutely roasting up here, which is not so much fun. But I'm so excited to be talking to you about your fabulous book, Rapids.
Great.
So I wondered if you could kick things off, because we've only got half an hour, things off with a non-spoilery introduction to Rapids.
Okay, well, non-spoiler introduction. It's about two best friends called Jan and Chelsea. They live in a boring little village in the West Country, and they're desperate to leave it, being both 17 years old, and they are going to London for a week in the summer to look around universities and stay with one of Chelsea's relatives. And as they see it escape from their little village forever by whatever means necessary, Jan wants to go to art college and Chelsea wants to be an academic. She's not from the kind of background where you're normally encouraged to do that. And Jan is half Chinese. She's very loud and flamboyant. She wants to make hats for a living. Nobody knows what this strange person is back in the home village of Brockford. So they're both misfits and they're both looking for an interesting future. But what happens when they get to London is that Jan, who is already behaving a bit strangely, starts behaving more and more strangely. And it's not really a spoiler to say that it turns out that Jan has bipolar, because that's what the whole book is about. So the story has that developing at the same time as these two friends are trying to look around London and do fun things and enjoy being there. Chelsea is kind of a second strand to the story. Jan is on the front cover, and she's the thing that promotes it, but Chelsea's story is also important. Yep, big picture of Jan being waved at us there.
With a very fabulous hat.
Yes, it is a very fabulous hat, and Jan is generally fabulous. Chelsea's a bit quieter, but she's into fandom for a TV show called Helm, and she writes fanfic. And as anyone who is in fandom will know, there is quite a lot of discourse in this fandom. And people are constantly fighting each other online, and Chelsea is quite quiet and peaceable and is distressed by this, so she's also trying to deal with this online at the same time as trying to deal with the fact that Jan is apparently going crazy. So that's basically the setup of the book.
Fantastic. And it is a book with there's a lot packed into your book.
Yeah,
there is definitely a lot going on. So what drew you specifically to writing this story? What was it about Jan and her development that you were like, I've got to write this?
Well, I have bipolar, so I wanted to write a story about that. There are other YA novels out there about bipolar, and some of them are very good, but they do tend to be quite grim and tragic. And the tragic struggle of the character to overcome their condition. And obviously one does have to struggle tragically to some degree, but I wanted to create a character who was far more assertive than that. And the strapline for the novel is in the battle of Yan versus bipolar disorder, does the poor disease stand a chance? And it becomes apparent by the end that no, it doesn't. Yan is going to have to put up with it, but it's not going to get the best of her. And the other elements in the book, there's Chelsea's wanting to be an academic from quite a modest background. My background isn't as modest as Chelsea's, but there's some of me in that as well. I'm not from a particularly rich or privileged background, but I really wanted to go to Oxford, study English and so on, and that worked out for me. Chelsea is not quite sure in the book what she's going to end up doing, but obviously if you read to the end of the book you will find out. And there are some other aspects. No spoilers. No. There are some aspects of the book that are not from my experience. Yan is half Chinese, which is well out of my experience. And of course, at the moment, there's a lot of discussion about cultural appropriation, how to write sensitively about other people's identities and important things like that. So I've tried to do my best there. I've got a good friend who's Anglo-Chinese, had a sensitivity read, done as much research as I can, obviously. But an interesting thing in this book is it's quite important that its own voices with regard to the bipolar disorder. I really wanted that to be the case, but it's certainly not own voices with regard to this other key aspect of Yan's identity. I think that's an interesting question for contemporary YA, because on the one hand there is quite a lot of pressure to write what you know and write it in a way that will be considered acceptable, and there is also pressure to be as inclusive as possible, and I think both of these are very valid, and the only way to do that is to put parts of one's own experience and parts of other people's experience into one's writing. So that's what I've tried to do here. I've tried to include something that I know very well that isn't necessarily fully explored in other books, the bipolar disorder, and I try to include someone else's identity that isn't necessarily fully explored in YA fiction as well. It would be fabulous to see more Anglo-Chinese authors out there, but I don't think there are many at present. Well, I can recommend Chinglish by Su Chung for anyone who wants a first-hand account of growing up Anglo-Chinese.
Fantastic. I haven't read that, so I'm going to add that to my list. Brilliant.
Yes. Good one.
So you talked a little bit about Lord Helm, and it's an intrinsic part of the book. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about how you created that aspect of the fandom, and do you have any future plans for Lord Helm?
Yes, I do. If you look at the back of the book, there's a little teaser for Chelsea's Guide to Nordhelm, which is a fun follow-up that's going to be published in a few months' time. It will just be an ebook, I think, a bunch of blog posts from Chelsea about her favourite TV show. Nordhelm is, of course, a completely fictional creation, not merely fictional as in it's a fictional TV show, but it's a fictional TV show. You know what I mean? Yes, it's doubly fictional. It's set in
within a story
within a story, yeah. It's set in a fake Scandinavia, so it's designed to be reminiscent of other TV shows, so that people feeling it get that vibe of this is something I've seen before. So it's a bit like Xena. I don't know if anyone will have remembered Xena, but Xena Warrior Princess was a big yeah. And there's also a lot of Viking shows out there at the moment, but the Viking shows are either deadly serious or complete satire, whereas this one is more of a fantasy thing. So it's I
was imagining like The Witcher, but crossed with Vikings. So Ragnar Lothbrok in the Witcher.
Yeah, and a bit more camp than that. Yeah,
and at the beginning of the book, you've got like a little introduction to Lord Helm, and I did flip back several times as I was reading through to refresh myself with the characters. Yeah. But obviously, so you came up with all of the characters and different plot lines for the show. What was that like, coming up with all of those ideas?
Oh, I have assistance in this respect because one of my best friends is Swedish, I wasn't quite sure what to do with the fictional TV show. It was originally going to be, well, set in a sort of fake tropical environment. But of course, my Swedish best friend said, why don't you set it in Sweden? Which meant that I actually had an expert on the mythology in question. So I was able to take a bit of a shortcut there. And I've been over there a few times pre-plague. And we spent some very fun weekends at her family's lake house, bashing out ideas for Helm. So Helm was heavily influenced by my friend, and it's partly hers, I think. She was particularly good at coming up with mythological background, as you would expect, and suggesting what kind of creature should appear in there, because there is a particular Swedish take on trolls, for example, that I didn't previously realise. So there's quite a lot of generic stuff in this fantasy world that's meant to make it accessible, so mermaids and trolls and so on, but it does have a specific Swedish flavour.
Vampire mermaids. No,
Vampire mermaids, yes.
Yeah, vampire mermaids.
Yes, well, Jan's favourite character is the vampire mermaid, and Jan's fandom name is Isga_bites_you, Isga being the name of the vampire mermaid. And Jan is basically the sort of person who would want to be a vampire mermaid, yes. That tells you a lot about Jan.
I feel like it would be a fun thing to be, actually, a vampire mermaid.
Yes, it would give you a lot of scope. You'd have to avoid fire, but there are a lot of things that you could do with that. And she's 300. This vampire mermaid is 300 years old as well, so she uses it to make trouble and annoy people, particularly the men.
Definitely. I think that's the best thing to do when you're making trouble, is just annoy the men.
Yeah. So you'll see a lot more of her in Chelsea's episode guide.
Fab. Have you thought about maybe writing a book for Nordhelm, or maybe even a television screenplay?
Well, the rights are available from my agent, so if anyone wants to pick up those rights, then I'll be very happy about it.
I feel like it would make a great Netflix series. So
yeah,
if any Netflix is watching, you know what to do. What's your agent's name? Quick, give her a plug.
Andrew Nürnberg Agency. It's Jenny Saville at Andrew Nürnberg.
So just contact Jenny.
Yeah,
she'll sort you out.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So as well as being a debut author, you're very busy working with writers. Can you tell us a little bit about your copy editing and your manuscript assessment work that you do?
Well, I've been involved in children's publishing for about 15 years now, starting off as an editor at Egmont, and I then worked around various other famous publishers. I spent a few years at Hachette and did some temping at Penguin and at HarperCollins. I've been freelance for about 5 years, and I do a lot of copy editing for those big publishers. And copy editing is when you tinker with things word by word, but you don't change the author's meaning to any extent. And then for individuals, I do manuscript assessment, which is when people send me their stories in quite rough condition, and I give them advice on how to shape things up, or how to possibly, sometimes I tell them they should chuck it in a blender and completely reshape everything. I don't know whether people always act on my advice, but the people come to me because they know that I know the industry quite well, so I will understand what publishers are looking for, and they also are looking to have their work pumped up on a creative level if possible. So I've got those two interesting halves to my editorial work, which is the working for publishers on quite detailed work and working for individuals on very broad brush things. And sometimes I do a kind of mixture for self-published authors as well. Obviously, there is much more money in criticising other people's work than there is in creating one's own work, I'm afraid. Writing is going to be a sideline for me. I think if millions of people would like to buy Rapids, then I will be very pleased about that. But yeah, let's go
and buy it, people. Go and buy it.
Yes, but I'm expecting to continue editing for the rest of my career, and it's very rewarding doing that. particularly with new writers who are really excited to get some professional insight on their manuscript and are often so glad to realise things that can help them so much and help them take shortcuts that otherwise they might have to spend years working out on their own.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, your website has details of how people can get in touch for a manuscript assessment. And I was I know this is a question that I haven't sent to you, but I'm just going to ask you this. It's perhaps maybe you can come up with maybe 1 or 2 tips for writers when it comes to editing their own work. Have you got any top tips that you see, in the manuscripts that you assess that you think, oh, this is quite a common one that people might need to know about?
Okay. Do not start your book with a dream. That advice.
Or end with one. End with the waking from a dream.
Oh no, that's so dreadful. I've never actually seen anyone do that. But a lot of unpublished writers do start with a dream, and it's something that can be done well. But I think literally 20% of the manuscripts I see start with a dream, and that's just too common for it to be something that will attract an agent's interest. And it sounds like a small thing, but that's right at the beginning of the book. So if an agent is just looking at something first thing in the morning and wanting a reason to reject it, then that will be the reason. Most manuscripts are too long, and that's better than being too short. But you do need to read through your work with an eye to thinking what you could get rid of. And if you think that you could get rid of, that probably means you should get rid of it. Reading your work aloud can be a good way of homing in on that, because if you find that you're droning along and it's not very interesting, then that's also a bad sign. Let me think if there's anything else useful I can say that's in generality. Characterization, that's something that people try to get right, and quite often I can see that they've been having a go and they haven't quite got there and they can't work out why. Usually the reason for that is because your main character is getting kicked around by the plot. I see that so often. The main character needs to have some degree of control over what they're doing. If they don't, then however interesting a person they are, the reader just isn't going to relate to them because they want to cheer along the hero of the book. And if that character is just football, then they won't. So hopefully those are a few pieces of useful advice.
It's excellent advice. So don't start with the dream. The dream is your book. The dream should not be in your book. Well, not at the beginning anyway. Your book is probably too long, so condense it down. I like to think of this as making really good Italian sauce for your pasta. You know, pasta
that's
sauce.
A good one. Yeah.
Stick it all in, boil it all up, distill it down until it's like the right amount of words.
Yeah.
And then for the third one, have a look at your plot and your characters. Make sure that your plot is being led by your characters, not your characters being led by your plot.
Yes, that was an excellent of my editorial advice. That was a much better way of putting it.
That was my summary.
Yes, that was a very good summary. She is after my job.
Not at all. But I might come to you for some advice.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so next question I've got for you is, so like me, you were a former finalist in Undiscovered Voices, and it's coming up to that time of the year when submissions are opening for Undiscovered Voices 2022. I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about your experience with Undiscovered Voices and how you found it, and then how that led on to you finding your agent and all of the fabulous things that have happened since.
Well, I was a winner a few years ago now. What happened to me was quite common, that the manuscript that was in Undiscovered Voices, my agent loved it and took me on the basis of that, but she couldn't actually sell that manuscript to publishers. And it's one I've written since then, Rapids, which has managed to get out there. As for how I originally found it, that was because I was already working in children's publishing. But the cliche that you have to be in publishing in order to get published, and it's really easy to get published if you are in publishing, isn't true. The one thing that is true is people have to reject you nicely. They can't just send you the bit of paper saying, yes, lovely book, go away. They have to send you a personal email telling you why they want it. So that's the one perk of being on the inside. Unfortunately, it's not a magic guarantee of publication. So I had to go through the Undiscovered Voices selection process like everybody else. and that was it was 6 years ago, 5 years ago now, so it's been a little while. And my agent was immediately interested because she liked the story, or she liked the first chapter that she saw, and my agent specializes in books about Russia, and this was a story that was set in Russia, so she was immediately keen on that and did a really hard graft for trying to sell it, and she tried really hard, and sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes a book can be really well written, but it's just not right for the market at that time, so that had to go in the drawer for a while, and then I started working on Rapids.
Fab. Excellent. Yeah, and I think it's it's wonderful when you find an agent and you know that they're in it for the long haul, so they're not in it just for this book, they're in it for all the books.
Yes,
which is definitely what you found with your agents. So it sounds like a fabulous partnership. So what are you doing next? What's coming next from you, Anna?
Well, there's this little fun project, Chelsea's Guide to Helm, that will hopefully coming in a few months, but that's not a mighty undertaking. That's just a fun thing. As I said, I have an interest in Russia. I'm currently writing an adult novel that's set in Russia. That's set in the period of the Russian Revolution, which is arguably an oversubscribed period of time. There is a lot of writing about that time period, but most of it is about tsars and jewels and rich people and that sort of thing, which I don't find as interesting as some people do. So I'm actually writing a book that looks at a couple of ordinary Bolshevik revolutionaries and why they were attracted to this ideology. And I feel it has some contemporary relevance because there's so much worry about extremism in the world we live in. And the question of what draws people to extremism is as important now as it was 100 years ago. It's not actually going to be a YA novel, but it is about two young women. So it will be of interest to some YA readers, I think, though it will definitely be adult. It's 200,000 words so far, so it's going to take
okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to direct you to rule number 2. Your book is probably a bit too long and you might need to squidge that down a bit.
Doesn't apply so much to adult novels. It depends on your...
Oh, okay then.
No, but yeah, it's clearly going to need cutting down. It's baggy to start with, but it's okay for your early draft to be baggy, but by the time you're sending it to an agent, then you want it to be nice.
God, yeah. My early drafts of the Nightsilver Promise were like twice as long as as it ended up being. But most of that was me telling myself the story. I don't know, how do you like to write? I'm much more of a pantser, although I have had to be a bit more structured with book 2. How do you like to do it? Do you like to write yourself an outline before you get going, or?
That's an interesting one because it completely changed a few years ago. I used to just sort of wander through the book, and perhaps that was the problem, but it didn't work for me. And with Rapids, I started with a very rigid plan, and that's been since I started doing a lot of independent manuscript assessments and hammering other people on how they should stick to this plot structure and really decide what they're doing before they do it. So I started giving this advice before I started following it, and following it has apparently worked for me. So yes, this proves that I give good editorial advice.
Definitely, yes. And yeah, I found it quite I think I needed to just like do all of those long drafts because of all the fantasy elements in my story. I was teaching myself what the world was about, and I was learning. Although in book 2 I found out new things about the world, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I can see how that is there now, and I've just been discovering it. Did you find that with Nordhelm as opposed to kind of Jan and Chelsea's world, that you discovered things about it?
Yes, and there's not that much Nordhelm in Rapids, so it wasn't necessary for me to do a huge amount of advanced planning. But certainly while working on the Chelsea's Guide with my friend, we discovered all sorts of unknown things.
Exciting, yes. And it's great to have a friend to vibe off as well.
Yes, that's very important. Yes, that's another piece of editorial advice. Have a friend.
There you go. That's top tip number 4, peoples. Have a friend.
Yeah.
So
exploit that friend. That's the thing. Exploit the friend. Don't just have the friend. Exploit them.
yeah, use them for, and maybe have more than one friend, because you
Yeah,
want to show a draft, an early draft, to one friend, and then they know the story, so they're going to
yeah.
gasp at all of the right places. So grab another friend and
Hmm.
show it to them a little bit later after you've edited it. So
Yeah.
yeah, keep your friends close and keep them eager for your words.
Yes.
Yeah. Fabulous. So you mentioned the pandemic earlier.
Hmm.
What have you been doing during the pandemic, and how have you found that affected your creativity? I know some
Hmm.
people found it very, very hard to write, and other people found it as quite a nice escape. What has been your, how have you been affected?
It made my brain go a bit squishy, so I had trouble concentrating, like almost everybody, I think. And I do a lot of writing in coffee shops, so that was the great crisis. All these dreadful things are actually happening in the world, but my personal crisis, the coffee shop is closed and I can't work there. That's now resolved, fortunately. I got involved with the vaccination program as soon as it started up, though. So I've been helping out at the local vaccination clinic once a week. And for a writer, that's a very interesting thing to do, because you literally meet hundreds of people in one day. You don't really get to know them in depth, but still, at a time when most people have had to reduce their social circle to about 2 or 3 people who they happen to live with, I've suddenly been encountering more people than I've ever encountered in my life before, I think, because some days we put 1,000 people through the clinic, and if I'm on the front door saying go this way, then I will have an interaction with that person, however short. Since I'm not very social anyway, that I could well have actually literally interacted with more people in the last 5 months than I have in my life to date. So that's a contrary experience to most people's experience of the pandemic, I think.
Yeah, I like that. During pandemic, I got out a lot more than I usually do, and I saw loads more people. So
I did, yes. It's quite challenging sometimes, because at the beginning it was very old people who were vaccinated first, and I live in Lambeth, which is a very diverse borough, so we had a lot of people who needed help in one way or another, and whose English wasn't very good, and who were nervous about coming to be vaccinated. And of course people have to fill in quite complicated forms, because before they can be vaccinated, it's things like, do you have a bleeding disorder, and if the person has such and such a disorder, they possibly shouldn't be vaccinated. So it's quite challenging making sure that everybody understands what they're doing, ticks the right boxes. Normally ticking boxes is regarded as something annoyingly bureaucratic and irrelevant, but actually in this case people have to tick the right boxes, or something very, very bad can happen. So I've been helping people tick the right boxes for the last 5 months. And yeah, helping people tick the boxes has actually been fulfilling, which it doesn't really sound like normally.
no, definitely fulfilling. I think I didn't help out during the pandemic. And actually we're still shielding, because my other half, he's quite poorly, so we're
Mm-hmm.
still not really venturing out very much and things.
Yeah.
But I definitely would have wanted to be in charge of the sticker. Like, don't forget your sticker. Grab yourself a
Yeah.
sticker.
Yes, I do sticker duty sometimes, and I did think, okay, sticker duty may not be the most important. But actually, what I found was you get people coming through and you say, would you like a sticker? And they say, yes, please, can I have 3 stickers? I'm going to wear one on my Zoom call to my family in Italy tonight to encourage them to get vaccinated, because they don't want to. So actually, people being seen to wear stickers, just wandering around or being on Zoom calls to their family in other countries, is actually quite influential for normalising vaccination. So yes, stickers are actually quite important.
Very important. Yes, I've got my sticker on the back of my phone, so that when I'm,
Yeah.
And my other half,
Yeah.
he's fully vaxxed up. He's got both
Yeah.
his stickers on the back of his phone as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just flashing our stickers everywhere. It's like, yeah. Fabulous. I've got one last question for you,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is good, because we're just about on our half an hour, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when your YA readers read Rapids,
Mm-hmm.
what would you like them to take away from it?
Well, the mental health theme is central to Rapids, and I think the cool message is that people have mental health issues, and some of them are serious, but they are not doom. You can find a way to live with them. You can help your friend and they can still be your friend. You will go through some challenging times, but there's a good chance that it will be all right.
Definitely. I think it's important to remember this is part of who somebody is. It is not all of who they are. Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for talking to me on the book chain. Who are you talking to next time?
I will be talking to Louise Gooding next time.
And I did see her pop up earlier.
Yes, she's the author of Just Like Me, which is a fascinating book about lots of neurodiverse or physically disabled people who achieved in life. That's a non-fiction book.
Excellent. And when's that? Is that next Wednesday?
Yes, that's next Wednesday.
At 7:30?
Yes.
Brilliant. I shall set my alarm and be there. And I suggest that everybody who's watching this does likewise.
Great.
Right. Well, thank you ever so much. We're going to pop over to Zoom now and record some extra stuff for Kitty. And everybody else, do have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Bye.
And buy Rapids.
Yes, do that.
Immediately.
What are you
waiting for? Oh, go on, go do it. Go.
You're on your computer, you can do it now. Yep.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Bye.
She's facing zombies, ghosts, witches and hellhounds with nothing but her wits and a talking cat. It's a bad day for Ivy. Raising Hell by Bryony Pierce, out June 2021.
Hello and welcome to the green room for the book chain. I am joined by Annabelle. We just did an Instagram live, which was a lot of fun. If you've missed it, pop back and watch it. If you're watching this on the end of our YouTube video, then yay for you. So Anna, we went through all of the questions on the Instagram live that I had for you. Are there any questions that you'd wish that I'd asked you, or any questions that you have, extra things that you'd like to tell everyone?
Extra things. Well, I was interested in the commonalities between our experience, I guess. You talked a lot about editing, and you have editorial experience as well, don't you?
Yes. So I've worked as an editor for Golden Egg, and before that I did some freelance editing, and I used to teach creative writing.
So Golden Egg is an editorial agency. Yeah.
So the Golden Egg Academy is it helps people with their manuscripts, and it gives them some teaching on key aspects of writing. Yeah.
So we do quite similar things there. But yeah, I produce really long reports for people. Do you do that sometimes?
Yes. Are yours nice and detailed and like, oh, I love this bit, and let's this is how we can make this bit more singy. Yes,
that's the sort of thing.
Fabulous. And also we both went through Undiscovered Voices.
Yes. You were much more recent than me, weren't you?
Yeah, so I was part of Undiscovered Voices 2020. So just last year. Yes, just last year.
It was actually with your current book that you got published that you were in. Yes, that's good. That happens sometimes.
Yeah, so both me and two other people that were in my group got picked up and got contracts for the books that we were in Undiscovered Voices with. But some of the other people who have been picked up by agents, they're reworking or they're going out with other books that they've written. So
yes, I have about a dozen unpublished manuscripts in the drawer, so it took me quite a while to get anywhere. And like most people's, I have a whole bunch of rather useless manuscripts. It takes quite
there
a while.
There are learning ones. They're the ones we use to learn how to do the writing, and it's a difficult thing to do the writing. So yeah. So do you think that your Undiscovered Voices manuscript, which you said was about Russia, do you think that might ever see the light of day?
It would be nice if it did, yes. It was specifically about the Stalin period, which is a grim period, and it was about a girl who has to get by after her parents are arrested on trumped up charges, obviously. So it's not a fun read, but it was hopefully an engrossing read, And perhaps if Rapids is popular, this one might still see the light of day. That would be great. Oops, let's remove the noisy machine from in front of me. Well, as I'm now writing an adult novel about Russia, so something about Russia will probably make it out there at some point.
Yeah, because don't you have Russia in your academic background?
Yes, right? I did an MA in Russian studies, for no particularly good reason. I just became fascinated by Russia after doing Russian GCSE. And because my name is Anna, people assume that she must have some Russian heritage, but I don't. In fact, this has turned out to be useful at a vaccination clinic. Occasionally, we get people who come through who speak Russian, so I'm able to help them fill in their forms. So finally, learning Russian has actually had some practical application, but that's about the only one.
Brilliant. And I'm glad that you're able to use it to help people in the bestest kind of way during this pandemic.
Bit,
yeah. Which is fabulous. Okay, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to touch on.
Well, there's a list of fun questions.
Oh yes, okay. Do you have the fun questions up? Which sounds terrible because I was supposed to be asking the questions, but I don't have the fun questions up. I was going to ask you actually where you write. So where do you usually write?
Where I am now, which is quite a boring looking room, as you can see. I
don't know. I think I'm looking at your wardrobes at the back. I think that is like a perfect place to put lots of scenes, writing them out on little notes, post-its. And so, although my post-it notes are huge, look, that's the size of my post-it notes. So perhaps you need to get some giant post-it notes and
yeah. I do have books in here, but the books are off screen, and the little friend lurking, I thought, would be a slightly disturbing presence in the background of the video.
I like him. Is he like a muse or?
No, it's she. Are you not familiar with the Moomins?
Not really. No.
Well, anyone who's familiar with the Moomins will recognise this as the Groke. She's the scary character who chases the Moomins around, but she's also kind of tragic because she's always cold and she can't get warm, so she's chasing the Moomins because she wants to get warm. But in one of the later Moomin books, she forges a relationship with Moomin Troll, who brings out a lantern and waves it for her so that she gets to see the nice light.
Oh, she just needs a hug.
Yeah, but she freezes everything she touches. Well, this Groke can obviously have a hug, but the book Groke can't have a hug. So yeah, go back to lurking behind me in a slightly sinister fashion, Groke.
Yeah, no, I'm not very familiar with Moomins. I didn't read a lot of fiction as a child. I've only ever read one Enid Blyton book, and that put me off. I read The Amazing Mr. Pink Whistle, which my friend Jane informs me is not the best one to go in with. But no, I mostly read non-fiction and the encyclopedia as a child.
So you've been starved of fantasy and are indulging in it now you grow up.
I think this is what it is. Yeah, definitely. My lack of fantasy fiction growing up has meant that I've had to write it older.
You didn't read The Lord of the Rings at age 7 then, because that's mostly what fantasy writers tend to say as their inspiration.
Yeah, I didn't know that The Lord of the Rings existed until I was at senior school, and I had an English teacher called Mr. Debry, and he must have realised that I'd be good at literature or something, because he was like, everybody else do this, Annaliese, would you like to read The Lord of the Rings? And he gave me my first copy of The Hobbit to read, whilst everybody else was doing other stuff. So yeah.
I really like to read fantasy literature, but then I end up writing really real world contemporary stuff and then sneaking in a fictional TV show into the contemporary real world.
Which is great, because you're doing both the things.
Yeah, both of the things, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you this evening and to get to know a little bit more about Rapids and your process. And hopefully all writers out there who are looking for somebody to work with in an editorial way on your manuscripts, do have a look at Anna's website. And you'll be able to find her email address on the website, but you'll also be able to find some information about her different editorial services that she offers. And she may or may not write back to you in Russian.
I don't think I'll start doing that. That would not get me clients. If I do that, they can go to the Golden Egg Academy instead.
Yes, Golden Egg Academy only takes children's writers. So yeah, fabulous. Well, it was wonderful speaking to you, and I wish Rapids the very best of luck. I've put my book up somewhere, probably behind my computer. Do you have yours to flash?
Rapids, it's fantastic.
Yes, and when I see you at an author event, I want you to be wearing all the hats.
Oh yeah, that hadn't occurred to me. I'm not as flamboyant as Jan, as you can probably see. Jan has sides to her that I do not relate to.
You can channel her through your hats. I feel that this would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And when the fans line up for the signing queue, they could be wearing their hats too.
That will be a good way of identifying myself if people don't know what I look like. Yes, a particularly alarming hat.
Or just the one that Jan's wearing on the front with all the sea spray. That would be beautiful.
Yes, I have to hire someone to make that. Yeah.
Some clever person. I'm not very good at being crafty personally. But... Excellent. Okay, well, take care. And good luck with Rapids.
Thank you. Bye for now.
I was just doing the palsy bit that she said to do. That's it. I'll stop recording now.
Hi, I hope you really enjoyed that. I love Annaliese and Anna so much. Anna was actually one of the line editors on my book. Fun fact. So that's my book up there. The Boy I Am. I haven't done a plug for it for a while. I hope you enjoy it if you've read it. And if you do, let me know in the comments. So next week, Anna will be interviewing Louise Gooding, who is, I think, one of our first non-fiction writers in the Book Chain project this year. She has put together a fantastic book called Just Like Me, which is a book with some fantastic neurodivergent people and stories about them to inspire and delight. I hope you meet us then, and I will see you soon. Bye. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe and comment and follow and share. I will speak to you soon.